Welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast, in association with symcotraining. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett. Now, some of you probably already know me as Skippy. I would start by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Hi, welcome to another episode of Selling in the Motor Trade. Today, I've got Nick Hill, who is the Managing Director, owner of Big Marketing. And I've got to get Nick on here today because one of our clients, and Mr. Wiseman, I know you listen to this all the time, was raving about what Big Marketing's doing for them and the change to the marketing companies. And I thought, we've not had a marketing company on the podcast. We talked to lots of different other training companies. We talk about the sales process. Nick, this podcast is all about selling more cars, selling more service, and we talk about the sales side of it. But I wanted to get you on because I suppose marketing is the other side of the sales coin. It's the same coin. So, Nick, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Nice to meet you eventually.
Okay, so for people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, Nick. How did you get started with Big Marketing? Where was your start in the motor trade? Or was it motor trade to start with?
Well, initially I was a typical little salesman.
Okay.
Doing working at a Vauxhall dealership as a transaction manager. Then I left there and went to work at another Vauxhall dealer, but as a salesman. Mm-hmm. It didn't last very long because at the time I had a little sunbed business, being a little entrepreneur, and I used to sit in the office taking bookings for my sunbeds. Okay. They found out, and obviously they wanted me to leave, but I understand. So then went from the car industry into newspapers, selling space to the motor dealers that I just loved. There's something about the motor trade that is very special. And being in that environment, you know, typically a newspaper boy going to see my dealers every week and seeing what advert they want and helping design it and blah, 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 blah. Really enjoyed that, you know, worked for a really good newspaper in St. Albans. You had, you know, in those days, you'd have like a 50-page newspaper of just motors, you know, and then the paper around. Obviously, they don't really exist now.
No, they don't.
So did all that. That was exciting. Then I was invited by some friends of mine who worked in the newspaper industry. They were starting up an agency. It was very new in those days, a company called Calibra Marketing. Went to work for them, you know, was on commission only, you know, I had to pay my own insurance and everything else. And, you know, that was hard, but ended up earning a fortune with them. And I think they thought, well, we can't keep paying him this. He's earning more than us. So they made me a director at a very young age. That I really enjoyed, but really sort of found, you know, my spark there. I suppose like a lot of young kids these days, no one really knows what they want to do, you know, and the schools don't really help, do they? They should, you know, perhaps throw people into 5 different jobs that they can experience so they get a feel for where they want to go in life. Because, you know, I had loads of jobs.
Isn't it, Nick, so true, isn't it? At 16 years old, you've got to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life.
You haven't got a clue.
I'm 51 now. I don't know if I want to know what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so, you know, you've got to enjoy what you do in life because you spend a lot of hours doing it. Yeah. You know, when I first started up, you know, when I worked at Calibra Marketing, I left later years just because I was growing out of them, in effect, and started up myself with a friend of mine who's got a dealership called Anthony Betts.
Mr. Betts.
Correct. And I've known
Davenport Vernon, Evans Allshaw, early first.
That's it. Yeah. I used to deal with Davenport Vernon's as a group. Met Anthony, and that's when Anthony was leaving Davenport Vernon's and was starting up you know, the dealer. You know, when you become a dealer and you pay 50 grand. Okay. I can't call it now, but
yeah, one of the sponsored dealership programs.
Yeah, and they started them up years ago. And Anthony needed some investment. I said, yeah, I'll invest. And I invested with him. And for years, we worked together, you know, having part of each other's company. moved away, did my own thing. Things just naturally progress and you want to do it yourself. Then started up big marketing. Never looked back, really. I mean,
so you've got that depth of knowledge there from being transaction manager, being a salesperson, working with dealers all the time. I didn't realize you're a dealer owner as well. That must give you a different insight when you're dealing with your clients now.
well, you realize everything's yesterday.
Yeah.
But being a, I don't know if you'd call it, if I was young now, people might say, Nick, you've got HDHD or whatever it's called, because I can't sit still. But that's always been the way I am. And, I've always been the person that calls back people straight away. And, I'm on it straight away. They get it yesterday. And it's so worked in the industry I was going into.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing is as that person, as the MD, it sort of projects through your staff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, with Chris, you can work with agencies that have a very different perspective of the motor trade, and do things when they're ready. So the difference is with someone like Chris, what he's experiencing is that people there for him throughout the journey, and he'll get a call back in that day. In effect, perhaps he's not used to that.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll get artwork and visuals and ideas within that day or the day after. So if you're not used to that, it's like a miracle.
Yeah.
And obviously dealers really appreciate that because it's a fast moving industry. They've got cars to sell, things change every day, and they need to be reactive to that.
Yeah.
And it's fun, we put on events and for Chris and different dealers, like the VIP events with portals and everything.
Okay. So tell us a bit about your business then. So marketing, and again, I don't know anything about the marketing world. So traditionally for marketing is all the point of sale material. It used to always be newspapers. It's now pay-per-click. It's now events. Tell us about big marketing. What do you focus on?
Well, it sounds like, Simon, you need my help first.
Okay. Yes. It's a good question because I suppose the only marketing that we do is this podcast. Could we call this podcast? This goes out to 5,000-6,000 people every Thursday. And I suppose as a training company, we don't really look at the marketing side of it.
I think the thing is, because of the experience I have in the motor trade and knowing it inside out, and obviously my team do because they've been here so many years, you have the ability from a dealer to get information and adapt it to look the most exciting for a customer. Mm-hmm. So it's obviously getting a message where they'll just give you things and you go, okay, well, I can change that and ask some questions. Can I amend that? Can I tweak that? I think that would be better. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a deposit or whatever it is, we know what we're doing, so we can make a difference on the appearance of their offering and then know the mediums to use that work the best. Mm-hmm. So it's not a case of just saying, well, you need to do this, this, and this. Obviously, we get excited about using all the different things with platforms we've made up or use to give a result, because as much as we're all in it to make a living, and we all are, I get more satisfaction of, people like Chris going, or Tracy, who runs his marketing department, and loads of other dealers in Marshalls and everywhere else going, thank you. Mm. You're amazing, and that's everything, Simon. It's like the money's irrelevant. If I can get someone excited, even by turning a brief around in a day and getting the visuals back to them, they go, oh my God, that you did it so quick. And that's amazing. Mm-hmm. That's all I want.
Yeah.
And be able to get their message out to marketplace and generate inquiries.
So listen, you've dealt with lots of businesses, I suppose, like we have as a training company, kind of from the outside, but I'm enough. You must see the good and the great, and also the ugly. From your experience, what separates a great dealership or a business owner or something like that from maybe just the good? Is there any character traits stand out here?
I mean, very luckily, we have amazing relationships with all our dealers. Like they're friends. I mean, it's just lovely. I mean, it makes the job very easy. And I think it's because you do a good job. They appreciate it. I think the most frustrating thing with dealers is a lot of people think they can do marketing, and people won't listen to your advice of what you're suggesting.
Mhm.
It's a bit like VIP events. Everyone says, okay, well, we're going to plan this. We'll do these e-shots. We'll do WhatsApps, virtual SMSs, as part of the media comms.
Mhm.
But what they don't realize is we're sitting there in the background monitoring their appointments, and without them even knowing, if we don't think they've reached the benchmark of appointments that we think is satisfactory, we'll send out more communications without them even knowing.
Mhm.
So they hit where they need to hit. But there with the nice thing about that, Simon, is you've got people you deal with who trust you, and you can just do it. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's very rare to have a dealer group we don't get on with, or we don't get on with the people. It's just, it's part of it. You get some people, but the relationship doesn't last. You've got to trust your agency in what they say and what they do. But generally, most people are lovely. I mean, the motor trade's fickle. There's everything about it. I remember selling cars myself, and Saturday was such a buzz day. And being a young salesman, I used to remember talking to a customer, and then a 2p would run across the floor in between me and the customer. We would both be looking at it just because one of the salesmen wanted to pull a prank.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a very close industry, but a lovely industry. Very hard now, I'd say, compared to the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, so big marketing's been going for 25 years, I'm guessing, because there's a big 25 behind
Yeah,
your
right
head
behind
there.
me. Nice.
There. Okay. So in that last 25 years, you've seen huge changes. Do you see agency as a challenge for a marketing company dealing with the motor trade? Do you see that coming in? What's your views on
that? I don't know, Simon. It's a difficult call. I see a lot of manufacturers trying to do everything themselves, as they have done before in the past in loads of different areas, and they always seem to fail because they can't do what the dealers do. It's impossible. So personally, I can't see agency lasting. I think they'll all try it and it'll all fade away and everyone will be back to normal.
Well, as we're recording this podcast, JLR has publicly said they're not going to do agency now. Dale White, a great friend of the show, Suzuki, has said it's not for them. Now, I know that Dale White, Suzuki hasn't got a huge market share to affect, but if people are starting to say no, it's I just wonder, is it still going to happen now? Having said that, BMW is still full steam ahead with it. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out. I was just wondering how that might affect the marketing side of it. Will that affect what you're able to do?
Well, Mercedes, I think, started doing this and said to all their dealers, no, we're doing the marketing, blah, 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 blah. And it all fell apart. They suddenly didn't have a presence. They weren't pushing what they needed to push. And I think Mercedes, pushed back a little bit and have given more control back to the dealers to do their own marketing.
Okay.
So I think everyone needs to stick what they're good at, because that makes everything work. The dealers are good at making cars and, doing their national campaigns. Dealers are very good at promoting themselves because it's their livelihood. You suddenly take that away, it's not their livelihood and they're just getting paid per bonnet. It mostly saves on stocking loans, etc., the way it works, but it takes a bit of the feel away, to working, I get £600 a car. Wow. When I could be £1,200 a car.
Yeah.
So, dealers are what they are in the nature. They're hungry for business. I think the agency model just takes it away, but it's just manufacturer trying to be in control, I'd suggest.
And again, in that last 25 years, what significant changes have you seen? Okay. Clearly, email was not really a thing 25 years ago. Now, every inquiry starts that way, doesn't it? It's email, phone. Occasionally, people still walk into a dealership. But that's flipped on its head. We used to say people would walk in, phone in, maybe this new thing called email. Now it's email, phone, and if someone walks in, I don't know, people still do that. How has that changed your approach?
Well, we're still very, everything that's adapted now to digital. Obviously, the demise of newspapers of their days. Things become less personal, I think. And we'll talk to dealers and, we'll suggest various items to use, because there's still a place for direct mail,
Mhm.
obviously, because there's not a lot of direct mail going out.
Yeah, great.
So, it sort of turned it on its head a little bit where you can use direct mail to a good piece. I mean, there's WhatsApp campaigns now that work really well, and we get bigger conversion rates than the average SMS that people used to do.
Mhm. Yeah.
So we invented virtual SMSs that are like a storyboard. People can go through and book what they want.
Okay.
But yeah, it's you obviously still get people walking into the dealerships, but I still find a lot of people, Simon, want to touch and feel a car.
Yeah, so true, isn't it? Let's just have a look at Kazoo. What's happened
Mm.
there? It's the Carvana in America. Their share price plummeted. I think they're recovering now there, but it's I think the idea that people will just go to mouse to house, I think was the phrase.
Yeah.
I think very quickly people learned that
House to house. Was that Kazoo, or was that Big Motoring World?
could be big motoring world. I
Yeah.
think it was. I think it was. Don't quote me on that one. It's a great phrase, mouse to house.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But you know what? I still think people want to touch and feel and drive the car. And I still think that salesperson is going to be part of the process.
Yeah.
Probably more so under agency, because if the only differentiator is the people I'm dealing with. So surely we need to market the business, the family-owned business, the salesperson, the knowledge there. Because if price is not going to be a factor at all, why
No.
should we go to one business, not the other?
Price and service, isn't it? I want to buy somewhere where if I have a problem, I can let them look at it easily enough.
Yeah.
And I like a relationship.
Yeah. People buy people, don't
Absolutely. Absolutely.
they?
And
You mentioned something, virtual SMSs. Sorry, I'm going to ask you an ignorant question. What's a virtual SMS?
oh, it's one of our special taglines, Simon, to make it sound fancy, but it is fancy. It's it's like especially made for mobile phones. It's like you create images and pages and offers, and you get the message come up on your phone. You can just scroll through the different adverts, and you can say, yes, I'm interested, request a call back.
Okay.
And same with VIPs, you can book your appointments through there, the whole journey. It's all personalized. So just something different we came up with. And same with the WhatsApp, that really works now.
Yeah. WhatsApp getting a higher hit rate than text, doesn't it? I suppose everyone just WhatsApps nowadays.
Yeah, and because we can do this picturing now, so I can actually do it like a virtual SMS with images, it changes it completely.
Mhm.
But everyone's got to remember, marketing out to customers, retailers, with the retail is a case of getting the right mix of mediums. People, I'd say to a lot of dealers, 48 sheets are still strong.
Okay.
The poster sites you see out because they bring you out of where you are, and everyone recognizes the 48 sheet as top end people are using them, as in the big boys.
Yeah.
It suddenly gives you credibility as well. I mean, there's loads, Simon. Listen, when you've done it for so many years and you've dealt with so many different people and all the results you've ever got, what works. It's in your head.
Yeah.
It's nice just to go along and try and help people.
That
Like
sounds
you.
good. That sounds good.
No, you do a fine job, mate. I always listen to your cast. I find them really interesting.
Well, it's just one of those things that give people the knowledge, give them that, and we don't try and sell ideas at all. Okay,
No.
so this is what we do, and it's amazing how many people just come to you, and that's why I wanted to speak to you, because it's the marketing is one whole side of it that we've just not talked about on this podcast at all. So
It's really
some
weird.
advice. No, well, we're doing it now. We fixed it. Some advice. Someone's listening to this, a dealer owner, okay, a dealer group, maybe the head of business, a general manager, and they're looking at their marketing. What advice, without being a sales pitch, don't just say, come and deal with us. Okay, I'm sure they will, but what advice would you give to that manager when they're looking at their marketing? Where do they start looking at their marketing approach?
Well, most dealers would start it at the beginning of a financial year or their quarter. But there's quite a lot to do, Simon. It's not a case of, there's a lot of planning to do when you're putting up schedules, when you deal with big groups and little groups, you need to put planners together for the years in the things you're definitely doing, the things you're going to do that are ad hoc, you need to allow for. But with the motor trade, it's so, as I said, it's so different. Everything's yesterday. So as much as you'll have a plan, things always change, and you'll have an emergency to deal with, and you need to get it sorted.
Mm.
So, and there's so many different variants. Everyone says about marketing, but you've always got to remember, we can do some great marketing, you get loads of inquiries, great, but there is that funnel of let's not waste the inquiries that were already coming in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not a case of us spending money, it's looking at the bigger picture and going, well, let's plug that, finance renewals, are they sorted? So trying to automate loads of different things so people can focus on their core jobs, like a salesman, calling customers back, as we know, that's a struggle sometimes.
It is. Yes, it is. I suppose that's where we take over, where you get the people to come through the doors or pick up the phone or send an email. So people have to still get on it straight away.
I mean, I've always said, Simon, if I was to run my own dealership,
Mm-hmm.
I know I sort of virtually did, but didn't. I'd always have like a person or two people that would take every inquiry, whether it was a walk-in, whether it was from reception, a call-in, an internet inquiry, and have those two people literally going around the whole dealership, chasing up salesmen. What have you done with this? Where are you? So everything is accountable. Because that inquiry could have cost you £50, and
yeah, it does.
It's blown.
Would it be just £50 now? It's going to be more than £50.
Could be more. I mean, an Auto Trader inquiry could be £150.
Yeah. Yeah.
So exactly. it's plugging all the gaps first. Let's look at leakage, and how we can improve what we have already. Because sometimes people have loads of inquiries, Simon, and don't need to do loads of marketing, but they've just got so much leakage.
Yeah.
So it's dealing with that first, and then dealing with what we've done. It's not a case of just spend.
Yeah.
Economies of scale.
Also, I've got to say, after COVID-19, you didn't have to be a genius to sell a new or used car. I suppose it was a limited supply market. Okay, it was definitely a pull market, and the whole sales process, Nick, was, hey, is that car available? Okay, yes, I want it. And the salesperson was saying, yeah, it's available. Buy it now. Otherwise, I've got 3 other people who want it. And the sales process went out the window, but also marketing. So events like your the VIP events, I know Rhino does and stuff like that, they almost just stopped. It's now turning into a push market. And I want to get your views between now and the end of the year. The clients you're speaking to, are they saying that they're getting more and more of this push market? Are we coming back to the pre-reg situation? Are we getting people saying we need to be selling EV to get our mix right there? Is that what you're seeing out there?
Yeah, I think it's all going back to where it was.
Yeah.
I think it's all going back to when, there were mega deals out there. And I think EV situation doesn't help that. So I think long term, there's going to be push, deals, and it will get back to where it was. Most things are a circle. Everyone enjoyed COVID, we didn't have to, we were order taking through that journey.
Yeah.
But now it's getting harder, now the stock's coming through and people have got loads of cars. They have to have a way to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And I assume the manufacturers start off with the best intentions of, we need to keep this rate, we're not discounting, but you'll suddenly see 0% here and this amount of this. And I think it's all changing now. I think there's more urges for events and a different way of doing events, to be honest, that I can't say too much, but there is something coming that's completely different.
Okay. I think there's time for that. And there's no disrespect to other people that, and I said this is First Marketing Company. My apologies. We did speak to the guys Rhino probably 3 years ago.
Okay.
And they were probably known just for events. So I don't think they're a real marketing company. They do just events from what I understand.
Yeah.
Events, have they had their day? You still do events? Okay.
No, I think you'll always have events. I think the problem is with it now, Simon, is most dealers or GMs rely on that big figure for September. And not doing an event is like not doing Auto Trader. It's one of those things you go, oh God, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to have to. Just to hit that number, they're so used to it. But as long as you don't, it will always give you that number. That's a positive for the registration months, March and September. But you've got to think about the rest of the year.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just those months is the be all and end all. You've got to just keep creating excitement for customers to bring them forward, get them out of their finance earlier, and turn those into deals. That's, you know, it's looking at every single area. I mean, most people just give us a budget and say get on with it.
Mhm.
You know, and we'll put a plan in place, but we'll go and see them and see, like I said, the leakage.
Yeah.
So many holes to plug. But it's exciting, Simon. It's no different to your job. I suggest you love what you do,
Yeah, I am one of those
training and
people.
everything else.
Well, I said right at the beginning of this that I'm 51 now. I don't know what I want to do. I don't want to do anything other than this. I still love the motor trade.
Yeah.
I love the people. I still get the buzz of it day in, day out.
Yep.
And you obviously had that same thing as well.
I'm older than you, though, Simon.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that. So listen, Nick, how do people get hold of you? Okay, if they hear like, hold on, I like the idea of some of these events. Maybe do you work just with bigger groups there, or do you do one-off stuff with people?
No, listen, I think you care as much for one as you do 20.
Mm.
You know, everyone's special, and there's always a job to do. I think it's so rewarding going in and, you know, I suppose it's like people that have been in the motor trade doing a bit of consultancy, to be honest, even though it's not, is going out and finding all the problems and putting them all right. And then you're starting a nice, clean journey, and everything's a positive journey then.
Yeah.
You know, I love it. You know, it's really rewarding.
Yeah.
To do what you do and get thanks from people. And that's no different to you, mate, when you do your training. I'm sure you'll make a difference when people are training and you're training people, and salespeople will go, oh, I used that yesterday or whatever, and it worked.
Yeah.
You know?
I've got to ask, do you think there's a future for the motor trade? Would you want your children to go in it? Now, I know the answer to that because, Nick, your son has started in the motor trade.
He has, bless. He's started to work at Brayley's Hyundai.
Very good.
And loves it. You know, he was, really enjoys it. He's doing well. Well, I assume he's doing well. I've not had any bad reports. And he's still got a job. So he's doing well. But the nice thing is he enjoys it. And, you know, everyone forgets in the motor trade, most things you do in the motor trade is if you want a career for life.
Yeah. Yep. And you can still, in 2024, when we were recording this, you can still earn very good money in the motor trade.
Absolutely.
And sometimes compared to the national average wage, I think someone told me it's 36,000 or something like that. A salesperson can still earn the 40s, 50s and more. I'm talking about averages now. And sometimes we forget that the motor trade is still very well paid without having to have the qualification of being a airline pilot or the chartered accountant or something like that.
Yeah, it's a nice industry to go into if, one, you don't know what you want, you want to try something different, you like cars, etc. And you're not overqualified. You know, you're not an accountant level of qualifications to get in to the motor trade, and it just works.
But also the skills that we learn, Nick, in selling cars, I think in any business helps. Simple little things like we were speaking to Dash Gupta previously on the podcast, and he said things he uses still to make an appointment, not when do you want to come in, how do you want to come in the next Thursday or Friday. That's no different to your business or so many other businesses. So the basic skills I think your son will learn will help him on any industry he wants to go into.
I think everyone's got to remember, Simon, it's all about your staff. You've got to treat them lovely. You treat them lovely, you get lovely back.
Yeah.
As simple as, you know, you should go to work as a boss as the same as you are at home and look after people. You know, it's such a simple thing to do. Be nice, you get nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So how many people do you have to look after on a daily basis?
What, as in customers?
No, your staff. How many internal staff?
We've got about 17 now. We had a lot more at COVID, but obviously COVID had a hit on everyone. And it's growing nicely again. So that's really nice. And I just steer now, Simon. I'm, end of the ship, just helping people do the best they can for their customers, advising them, obviously, with knowledge that I know of what to do, how to do it.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Yeah. And is marketing the young person's game now? Is it as you're steering, but do you need that creative young person's spark there?
I think it's just general overall knowledge of the motor trade is the most important thing
Mm.
because you know what their needs are. And to have a creative head and think outside the box. It's always coming up with something, Simon, that the customers will go, oh, I'll buy into that. I'll look at that. It's no different to me walking down the high street. If I was walking down the high street normally and I was walking down the high street in a Batman outfit, you'd remember that for the rest of the day.
Yeah, yeah, you would.
So it's just standing out enough to make a difference and not blend in with everyone else.
Brilliant. Well, listen,
Yeah,
I know you've got another meeting you've got to go to. I really do appreciate that. How do people get hold of you, Nick? What's the easiest way to get hold of you?
oh, just go to the internet or the website, www.bigmarketing.co.uk.
Perfect. Nick,
Or call some of our lovely customers that are happy and speak to them and they'll tell you.
well, and listen, I know that Chris Myerson was raving about what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, and Mr. Brayley, AWR, again, one of our clients. We have a lot of shed clients, actually. So, again, raving about what you're doing. So,
yeah, it was nice because I get feedback from what you guys are doing that's positive and you obviously get the same. So it's really nice to be able to say to you today that you do a good job and thank you for telling me I do a good job.
well, it is nice to hear that. Listen, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it.
Simon, been a pleasure. Lovely to see you.
You too.
All right, speak to you later.
Bye. That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, symcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn.